A new movie has actually come out, and we couldn't be more excited. An actual movie release! And that movie is, of course, The Croods: A New Age, and we have some things you may have missed. We may have missed out on a lot of movies this year, like a lot of movies. I'm still waiting for No Time to Die, but thankfully the box office hasn't been a complete bust, and a number of movies have still been able to be released, such as Tenet, Borat 2, and even The New Mutants. Yeah, who thought that was actually coming out? Another movie that has also been able to be released is the sequel to the 2013 movie The Croods. And it yet again is another fun, prehistoric, family-friendly movie with a smattering of references for the older audiences. That's why we're going to take a look at 25 things you may have missed in this movie, including references to popular movies, shows, video games, interesting facts, and how the production has dealt with the ever-destructive pandemic. Welcome back, everyone, to Croodacious Park.
Today is a good day to die!
Hey everyone, you'll never guess what I found out!
With 5 preceding movies getting a sequel, it's safe to say that Dreamworks like to give their movies a second outing, and sometimes third and fourth outing if you're Shrek. So despite the fact that The Croods arguably isn't as big a name as some of the other movies in Dreamworks' slate, such as Shrek, How to Train Your Dragon, and Kung Fu Panda, the original Croods movie made $600 million at the box office, so it's no surprise that they too got a sequel. Although, we were left waiting a while. The original Croods movie came out all the way back in the simpler times of 2013, meaning that this is the longest gap between Dreamworks movies at 7.5 years, which I know isn't exactly Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049 level, but still, a lot has happened in those 7.5 years. However, that gap has been somewhat bridged by the Croods animated show that ran for 4 seasons on Netflix, filling in some of the blanks in that time. Dawn of the Croods has our favorite prehistoric bunch meet new friends, come across new beasts and creatures, and discover some new firsts for the very first time. The series ran from 2015 to 2017 and is still available to stream if you want something to merge the original film and sequel together. However, the series didn't quite have the same stellar cast as the movies do. Which, speaking of things changing in 7.5 years, just look at Ryan Reynolds' career. One of the reasons we had to wait so long for a follow-up to that first outing was the fact that the project was actually initially scrapped. Reportedly, the production was having some problems back in 2016 and was struggling to progress. This left Universal, who co-produced the movie, to actually request that the project be binned entirely due to the fact that they couldn't get it fully up and running. However, in truly early Mann fashion, the Croods managed to survive their perilous circumstances, and production resumed on the project back in late 2017 with a new team at the helm. As we have mentioned countless times before, COVID stinks. It has delayed, hampered, and cancelled a number of projects and has left us not knowing when certain movies will be released. The Croods sequel managed to prevail, though, and actually managed to get the movie released earlier than anticipated, with it being pushed up to Thanksgiving weekend, making it one of the first Dreamworks movies to release on Thanksgiving for a while. But it didn't come without its setbacks, as COVID precautions meant that the animators had to do a bulk of the work from their own homes. Although, that didn't seem to slow down the proceedings too much, and although a majority of productions have suffered during COVID, like The Croods, other animated projects can still flourish as the animated work can be done from the safety of their own homes. But one thing COVID has done to work in the movie's favor is make it, surprisingly, one of the biggest box office releases since the start of the pandemic. Now, while there haven't been many other movies to exactly choose from, it's still an impressive feat, especially as Christopher Nolan's sci-fi epic Tenet came out this year despite COVID-19 restrictions. The movie garnered $35 million on its opening weekend, compared to Tenet, which made $9.5 million. Although it did go on to make $356 million overall, so we will have to wait and see whether The Croods can do the same. And while we're on the subject of COVID and the box office, it also has one of the shortest gaps between being released in theaters and making its way to video on demand and streaming, with it being released on video on demand on Christmas, only 1 month after its theatrical release. Which is ironic, seeing as how long it took for this sequel to actually come out. Because of the deal struck by Universal, we won't be seeing The Croods on streaming services such as Netflix or Hulu, but we should be able to rent it from Amazon as well as other video on demand platforms for Christmas. Now let's get away with all this COVID-19 stuff and onto the juicy pieces of information, shall we? While the movie is family-friendly, it does make some references for older audiences to enjoy, one of which comes from its hybrid animal, the land shark, which are seen as a menacing threat in the movie. Now, you mention the word shark, and your mind often goes to Jaws, but this reference is actually more meta than that. The addition of land sharks is arguably a nod back to the slew of SNL sketches back in the 70s which parodied the hit movie, with these land sharks breaking into people's homes and attacking them as the iconic music plays in the background. It may be a joke now, but land sharks sound terrifying. The movie also makes a surprising reference to a much more recent movie in the same vein as the Croods, the 2011 Smurfs movie. In one line in the sequel, we hear Eep telling Don, "I've never had a girlfriend before."
I've never had a girlfriend before!
Just like Smurfette did to Grace Winslow before leaving New York City and going back to Smurf Village.
Wow, I've never had a girlfriend before.
Seeing as Smurfette is voiced by Katy Perry, that could be a reference to her hit song I Kissed a Girl, but this is a Croods video, not a Smurfs video, so we need to swiftly move on from that. In an interview with Jimmy Fallon, Stone revealed that the voice she uses in the movie was based on a familiar source, Monica Geller. Stone said that she was unwittingly copying the cadence used by Monica actress Courtney Cox using the line,
I know!
in almost exactly the same way Monica does in Friends.
I know!
Crazy, right? Stone said, when I was watching it, I was like, am I doing Monica a lot and I didn't realize it for 10 years? And said that she was unknowingly planting an Easter egg. Well, you helped us out with this video, Emma, so thanks. But it's not just movies and shows the movie pays reference to, but also popular games. When the Croods come into contact with the Bettermans, they become obsessed with the large window, which of course is supposed to be reminiscent of a TV/phone screen. But they become even more obsessed with the action taking place on the other side of the window, with them watching the birds, which are strikingly reminiscent of the popular mobile game Angry Birds, which is, of course, also a movie. It may seem like decades ago since Angry Birds was the massive phenomenon it once was, but it's apparently still very much on the minds of the Croods team. I wonder if they still play Doodle Jump. As we're on the subject of the Bettermans, this one you may have caught as it's a little on the nose, but it's worth mentioning anyway. The Bettermans are more technologically advanced than the Croods, and boy do they know it, with them being exceptionally snooty and arrogant and have a similar relationship as Homer and Flanders in The Simpsons. Except Flanders is lovely and not very snobbish, and okay, I take that comparison back, that wasn't a very good one. Their relationship to the Croods, though, is reflected in their name, which of course is Betterman, or should I say Betterman. You get it? Yeah, you get it. Pair that with the Croods, or Croods, and I know, you get it. The cast of the movie is pretty darn big, with the likes of Nic Cage, Ryan Reynolds, Emma Stone, Catherine Keener, Peter Dinklage, and Leslie Mann all lending their voices to the movie. But initially, the cast was even bigger, with Two Broke Girls actor Kat Dennings originally attached to play the part of Dawn Betterman. However, the actor, who will be returning to the MCU in the upcoming WandaVision, eventually left the project for varying reasons and was instead replaced by Star Wars The Last Jedi actor Kelly Marie Tran. Now, while the movie is based on real historic time periods, it is somewhat loose with the actual history, which, I mean, not that we were expecting it to be accurate or anything, but just wanted to preface this next point. You still might be wondering what time period the movie is set in, though, and although the filmmakers were not exactly clear with this, they did joke that it was set in the Croodacious period, which is a pun on the word Cretaceous as well as a joke we used earlier. As this is set during the Croodacious period, we see a number of creatures going through an awkward puberty stage. That means that there are a ton of animal hybrids in the movie, such as kangadillos, punch monkeys, land sharks, and wolf spiders, to name a few, just to add a little bit of color to the world. Now, this probably isn't an Easter egg, but we would like to pretend that it is. These hybrid animals remind us of another animated work which also features these kinds of animals, Avatar: The Last Airbender. The cult classic has many fanciful beasts such as turtle ducks, lion turtles, and of course flying bisons. Now imagine if Appa showed up in the Croods. Now that would be a crossover. Of course, you can't have a movie set in this, albeit indiscriminate time period and not make reference to the Flintstones. The Betterman's tech, such as their shower and toilet systems and their exotic crops, is reminiscent of the types of things we see in the Flintstones, which were of course known for their wacky design. Just take the cars, for instance. But the characters in the Croods also feel somewhat familiar, with Eep's red hair and look reminding us of Pebbles, and Guy's use of a club reminding us of Bam Bam, and they feel like a grown-up version of the two. You can also make an argument for other character archetypes being relatively the same, and you can draw parallels between the Crood patriarch Grug and the Flintstones Fred. Yabba dabba Crood! The most adult reference, though, pays tribute to one of the most iconic bands of all time, the Beatles. Now, although it feels like the Beatles have been around since the dawn of time and the coming of the sun, they have only been around since the 60s, but of course have been a huge icon in pop culture, so are unsurprisingly referenced in the movie. In one scene, we see Grug getting drunk on shark milk, which I don't know exactly how that works, but let's just go with it. And the way his inebriation is depicted is very reminiscent of the trippy use of animation used in the Yellow Submarine. So next time you watch the video for Yellow Submarine, make sure to have a drink of ice-cold shark milk. Don't really though, that sounds really disgusting. Now this reference goes way back to 60s Disney. The majority of the movie takes place in the Betterman's jungle compound, with its focal point being the large and probably structurally unsound treehouse, which may look familiar to some as it is most likely a reference to the classic Swiss Family Robinson. This Disney movie follows a family who get washed up on a desert island and, to survive their perilous conditions, build an impressive and iconic treehouse, and like the Croods, go on a series of wacky adventures. Side by side, the treehouses look pretty similar. As we mentioned earlier, Emma Stone brought in experience from her world as a fan of Friends to shape her character, and that is the exact same thing that Kelly Marie Tran did with her character of Dawn. Although this time it was done on purpose. Dawn is a character with childlike wonder and very little experience of the outside world, so is unsurprisingly in awe when she steps out into the world beyond. Tran used her experience as a fledgling actor stepping onto the Star Wars set to influence her performance, as she said that walking around that set for the first time was magical. As this movie is centered on early Mann, it is again not surprising that the movie pays reference to religious texts that also reference the early days of Mann. In this case, the Bible. While the Bettermans share everything they have in the compound, the one thing they absolutely refuse to share is their large pile of bananas. I mean, they are very high in potassium, so it is understandable. This, therefore, makes them forbidden, and they are fruit. Forbidden fruit? Yeah, you know where I'm going with it. Now, for the most part, movies are pretty good with their continuity, but that doesn't mean there isn't the odd goof from time to time, and the Croods are no different. In the movie, we see Grug telling Sandy that her first word was boom, but in actuality, her first word in the first film was when she called him daddy. Unless boom and daddy mean the same thing in the world of the Croods? I mean, doubtful though, they speak pretty good English for cavemen. I think then that this needs to go down as a goof. This next one actually pertains more to the original movie, but it still has relevance. Out of all of the Dreamworks movies, the Croods may feel a little different, and there might be a good reason for that. That's because it's actually based on an abandoned project by the famous stop-motion company Aardman, the masterminds behind Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run. How closely the movie follows those original bones is unclear, but Aardman did end up visiting the prehistoric era with the movie Early Man. Now, this movie is by no means the most important movie in DreamWorks' slate, but it probably is for the movie's director, Joel Crawford. The original movie was directed by Kirk D'Amico and Chris Sanders, but the two left the sequel early on, with the reins being handed over to Crawford, who has spent a majority of his career as a story artist for the company. Now, it might be movie number 1 for Joel Crawford, but it is movie number 100 for actor and the movie's lead, Nic Cage. The movie serves as his 100th credit, and let's be honest, who can imagine a world without Nic Cage and his yelling, screaming out the word peace, pretending to be a vampire, and of course, stealing the Declaration of Independence? Here's to 100 more, Nick. As we've mentioned before, Dreamworks likes its sequels, and although there is a follow-up to Boss Baby set for next year, The Croods 2 is the most recent sequel for the studio. Although there have been many movies to get their own series, there have also been a number that haven't, and The Croods can count themselves lucky as the 6th Dreamworks movie to get a follow-up. And finally, the majority of the cast made their returns, with Nic Cage, Ryan Reynolds, and Emma Stone all reprising their roles from the original movie. But there are also some new additions to the crowd, although while Peter Dinklage and Kelly Marie Tran may be complete newcomers to the world of Dreamworks, Leslie Mann is making her return after voicing Patty Peterson in the 2014 movie Mr. Peabody and Sherman. So what did you make of this video? Did you enjoy the movie? Any we missed out on? Let us know in the comments below and make sure to subscribe today for all this and more. See you next time!